Tolbert, Yang, Council President Brenmoen. 4 present, 3 absent, being Councilmembers Prince, Tao, and Tolbert.
We invite you to stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Consent agenda items 4 through 21 are before you for your consideration.
And I believe Ms. Prince has requested item 6 to be removed from consent. Is there anything else that should be taken separately? All right, seeing none, Ms. Yang moves the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The consent agenda is adopted as amended. Item number 6, RES 20-82, approving the St. Paul All-Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Ms. Prince.
Yes, I invited Emergency Management Director Shute here today to just give us a brief staff report on this, because the news is always full of things that happen in cities, and I think it's great that we have this terrific plan and that people can be reassured that we're thinking about all the contingencies. So thank you.
Well, thank you for that, Councilmember Prince, and Council President and Council, thank you for considering the 2019 City of St. Paul All Hazards Mitigation Plan for adoption. This particular plan it's in its 3rd iteration. It was first adopted in 2007, and this revision has been underway since in earnest since January of 2018 by a project team headed out of my office, as well as a stakeholder working group that is broadly represented by city departments and as well as other private and nonprofit and other public entities throughout the city of St. Paul. So hazard mitigation is investing, in reducing the risk and the vulnerability to hazards prior to an emergency or disaster. Large visible examples of that are the West Side levee wall protecting West St. Paul. That's been in place for a long time. And the most recent example of that would be the Wabasha, the Wabasha sloughing, the protective measures put in place there to mitigate future damage from slope failure there. And they can involve low-cost efforts such as public information when severe warnings or severe weather is upon us on how to be prepared for that. So they vary in scale, but it's a very important part of the prepare, protect, respond, recover, and mitigate process that is doctrinally in place and executed throughout the country. So some other examples, utilizing federal grant money to ensure public safety and public service has the capabilities and capacity through equipping, training, and exercising, as well as some additional overtime staffing to attend that training. Coordinating with regional water services, most recently to improve the physical security of their facilities to ensure the safety and integrity of the water supply that serves the residents in St. Paul. Looking at emergency shelter plans and family assistance centers, that's with St. Paul Parks and Public Health to ensure that should we have to execute a large mass sheltering, that we're prepared to do that. And working with Public Health to ensure our mass dispensing plans are ready to be fruitful and executed should we suffer a disease outbreak. So obviously hazard mitigation falls right in line with our public safety efforts and our public services, saving lives and reducing injuries, preventing reducing property damage, reducing economic loss, maintaining critical services to the citizens of St. Paul, and protecting infrastructure from damage, as well as being good stewards of the environment. This plan actually informed our community action and resiliency plan that you recently adopted as well. So 2019, we looked at the top 10 threats. These threats are local in that they're most germane to St. Paul, but many are the same throughout the Midwest region. And as Councilmember Prince mentioned, that other jurisdictions face, but urban fires, damaging winds and thunderstorms in excess of 70 miles per hour, extreme heat and cold, rail incidents relating to oil and hazardous material spills, ice storms and blizzards in excess of 10 inches of snow, tornadoes, transportation incidents, flooding of the Mississippi River above flood stage of 12, which you should see again this spring, so I'll be spending some more time with you, perhaps. And chemical, biological, nuclear, and radiological incidents with the terrorism nexus, as well as cyber attacks. So those are the 10 threats or the risks that we really focus on in the 2019 plan. And that developed 31 action steps that I'll be monitoring as we execute the plan here moving forward in midterm and long-term investment on how we can get at reducing those risks. So this plan, along with the city's emergency operations plan that you adopted last month, are really the bedrock of how the city responds to it in emergency operation plans in that case, and then how do we mitigate prior to the emergency with the hazard mitigation plan. And it's critical, as Councilmember Prince stated, into truly mitigating the hazards for the citizens, but also ensuring public trust that we are working on these things. So acceptance of this plan and your approval does not incur any direct costs, but it does maintain our access to the federal funds under the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program in accordance with the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000 and those available to us by the Stafford Act. So I'm available to answer any additional questions, but I ask that you look favorably upon the plan.
Are there any specific questions? We really do appreciate the presentation and the information. This is the kind of stuff that you don't really think about until you need it, and then we really need it. And so to know that we're passing this plan, that you are doing this work is wonderful. I had the opportunity to go to FEMA camp early on in my time at the council, and we were talking about derailments. And it's not when you're talking about like emergency management around derailments, it matters what was in the train that tipped over or the car that tipped over. And so like there's eventualities for any sort of there's so many different ways that you can look at it, and we have to be prepared for all of them. So I know that the work that goes into making a plan like this is immense. So I appreciate the report, and also I'm supportive of the plan. Ms. Prince.
And you're mentioning that about train issues. I think we probably all received a letter from the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad Teamsters Union advising us that Burlington Northern is moving to a different protocol for checking their tracks that will be automated as opposed to being done by humans. And it's something I think I would like to contact you about, because it did raise some concerns. All of us have trains and BN trains going through, or most of us have Burlington Northern trains going through our wards, and it would be good for us to be aware of that and figure out if we should be responding as a city. So
I'll gladly follow up with you, Councilmember Prince. I know you have more trains than the other wards as well, and the mayor's office did provide that letter to me to research and provide a response option.
Oh, great. Very good. Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate the report. With that, Ms. Prince moves approval. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted.
And the next three items were unintentionally or inadvertently left off the agenda last week, so we are going to move, Ms. Naker will move suspension of the rules 3 times. We'll do it each time. Ms. Naker moves suspension of the rules. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
Resolution 20-46, changing the rate of pay for Assistant Fire Chief in EG 17, non-represented city managers.
So you can vote on it.
Okay. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, Ms. Naker moves approval. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted.
Ms. Naker moves suspension of the rules. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
Resolution 20-55, approving the labor agreement between the City of St. Paul and North Central States Regional Council of Carpenters.
Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, Mr. Tolbert moves approval. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted.
And Ms. Naker moves suspension of the rules. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
Resolution 20-56, changing the rate of pay for payroll specialist in EG 01 ASME clerical.
Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, Mr. Tom moves approval. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted.
Again, and I attributed this morning to the holiday and the fact that we typically don't miss 2 back-to-back weeks of meetings. So I think we had some errors. In this situation, we are going to be reconsidering the next 2 items. Ms. Jalali moves to reconsider Resolution 2068. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
Resolution 20-68, approving adverse action against the wine on-sale licenses held by Fashika Inc., doing business as Fashika Ethiopian Restaurant at 510 Snelling Avenue. And this item can be withdrawn because they have paid their fees.
All right. Ms. Yang moves reconsideration of Resolution 2036. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
Resolution 20-36, approving adverse action against Massage Center B license held by Kong Zhang, doing business as K's Massage at 917 Barclay Street. And this item is also can be withdrawn because they have also paid their fees. Item number 22, second reading of ordinance 20-3, amending Chapter 164 of the Legislative Code to prohibit the sale of parking permits issued for residential parking permit areas. This ordinance is laid over to February 5th for third reading public hearing. Item number 23, second reading of ordinance 20-1, amending Chapter 414 of the Legislative Code regarding massage and bodywork centers to add a solo massage center to the Class A license category. This ordinance is laid over to February 5th for third reading public hearing. Item number 24, second reading of ordinance 20-2, amending Chapter 412 of the Legislative Code regarding massage and bodywork centers to add a solo massage center to the Class A license category. This ordinance is laid over to February 5th for third reading public hearing. Item number 25, second reading of ordinance 20-5, amending Chapter 310 of the Legislative Code, license fees, to add a solo massage center to the Class A license category, defined as a location that is operated by a solo massage practitioner outside of the home. This ordinance is laid over to February 5th for third reading public hearing. Item number 26, first reading of ordinance 20-4, granting the application of Bonfi Properties LLP to rezone property at 337 7th Street West, 366 Smith Avenue North, and 372 Smith Avenue North from T2 to T3 traditional neighborhood and amending Chapter 60 of the Legislative Code pertaining to the zoning map. This ordinance is laid over to January 22nd for second reading. Item number 27, first reading of ordinance 20-6, granting the application of Brad Graves to rezone property at 1035 Arkwright Street from RT2 Townhouse Residential to RM2 Multiple Family Residential and amending Chapter 60 of the Legislative Code pertaining to the zoning map. This ordinance is laid over to January 22nd for second reading. Item number 28, resolution public hearing 20-15, amending the financing and spending plan of the Department of Parks and Recreation in the amount of $25,000 for funds granted from the National Recreation and Park Association for the Western Sculpture Park Play Area Improvement Project.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, Mr. Tao moves to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Legislative hearing consent agenda items 29 through 72 are before you for your consideration.
And good afternoon, Ms. Mormond.
Good afternoon, Council President Venmo and council members. I'm aware of one person here to testify, and that is for item number 33.
RLHTA 19-828, ratifying the appealed special tax assessment for property at 779 Carroll Avenue.
Ms. Mormond.
This is a vacant building fee for the time period of January 11th of 2019 through January 10th of 2020. So the year that it applies to is now complete. So we have 12 months in the vacant building program out of the 12 months that have been billed. There was a waiver, a 90-day waiver that the council put in place at the time that you considered an appeal of the order to vacate the property and of the vacant building registration, and that happened last spring. So in the meantime, Ms. Gainell Buckland, who is now the owner and clear title to the property, has gotten the code compliance inspection, and in the hearing indicated that she was interested in marketing and selling it, but did not want to have to pay a large assessment. My recommendation is approval of the assessment. The council could consider making it payable over a period of 5 years. And at this point, I think that the question is how quickly can it come out of the vacant building program in the 2020-2021 billing cycle so that there isn't a bill generated, or that one can be prorated moving forward.
Have we ever had a situation where we made the fee payable upon sale?
There is only one situation where that can happen, to the best of my knowledge, where the city is the one who triggers that. And we have not been practicing, and that would be a deferment of the assessment because of disability status. I don't know that real estate is even doing those anymore, but when they were doing that, it would be for a period of 5, 10, or 20 years, depending on the duration of the assessment. So it would be payable at the end of that time period or upon sale. Normally, assessments are paid at the time of the real estate transaction, so that's something that's happening at the closing.
Got it. Okay, thanks. And I suppose that date it varies, so it's hard to pin it down. All right.
Yeah.
Mr. Tao?
What was the total amount again?
The vacant building fee is $2,127. That includes a service charge of $157, bringing the total to $2,284 that's in front of you.
And so if it's a pay stretch over a 5-year period, how long is that?
It may be of assistance if the owner is going to be holding it for an extended period of time. It may be of assistance if the owner wants to pay part of it now rather than letting it roll onto the 2021 property tax bill. In most cases where someone is looking to sell the property, it doesn't matter if there's a set of payments, if there's a payment arrangement made or not, because it'll transact before any payment arrangement would really take effect. Does that make sense?
You're basically saying if the property is sold, the entire full lump sum would then be due upon
Correct.
sale.
Yeah, the payment arrangement would not transfer to the new owner.
Got it. Okay. Other questions for Ms. Mormond?
I would like to speak to this.
Ma'am?
That's why it was read in
Ma'am?
the record.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here who'd like to speak to this item? If you could just start out by letting us know your name, where you live, and then you have 5 minutes to share your perspective.
My name is Gaynell Buckland, and it was my aunt who lived at that particular address until she could not. And I had to have her taken in by ambulance, and she will not be coming back to live to the property. But when she had to be taken in and the city saw, structural stuff and other things, they triggered the whole thing. So anyway, the house itself is about to be sold to Ross Herman, and that would be like within the next couple of weeks, like say February 14th, I think is supposed to be the last day. So there won't be this coming up again, the $2,127 vacant building fee, because it is there's a purchase agreement already signed between myself and him. So, let's see, I did want to speak to not paying the $442 fee for the boarding up, because we had someone else do that instead, and they were trying to bill us for something that someone else did. Paul Manley of Northwest Architectural Salvage actually boarded up the windows and stuff. So. Is there any?
if I'm understanding correctly, and Ms. Mormon, I don't know if you, I'm asking you to multitask, I realize, but the vacant building fee is for the past 12 months, and this is for up to now, then the property, so
Yeah, and I just received a letter today from you on that score, and it says, let's see.
it's been provided. Service has been provided.
You have 15 days from the date of this letter to pay this bill before this fee is sent to assessment. And the date of the letter is January 13th. So,
Okay, so it's for services rendered over the past year. Yep. Okay, anything else you'd like to add? Because otherwise we'll close the public hearing. Okay. Mr. Tao moves to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion prevails. Mr. Tao.
Ms. Buckner, I'm just curious, so you said that purchase agreement's already been signed? for
yes,
this? And so was this vacant building fee disclosed? at the
yes, yes.
And so doesn't that mean that when you signed it, you knew that whoever the new owner is, they would have to pay this fee?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. And you're asking us to waive the fee? I guess I'm not clear when you ask us.
It would be nice. It would be nice.
Yeah, I probably can't do that, but what I'm hearing here is that if you know full well that this is part of the purchase agreement, then you still would have to be responsible for paying the vacant fee. Right. Does that make sense?
I know that in the, I had written a check, I don't know if, you may already have been paid that, I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I move with the recommendation of the hearing officer, but I feel this is a a transaction that typically is between the property owner and the buyer, right? And so it shouldn't really have to come before the council to make a decision on that, because we're not real estate attorney, but we still have to uphold our program and our ordinance. So that's why I'm going to go with the recommendation of the hearing officer.
And it does sound like there is a certificate of occupancy and it will be inhabited soon, so it won't get a vacant building fee for next year.
Yeah.
So that's a step in the right direction. I would support Mr. Tao's motion. Ms. Prince?
Yeah, I thought I heard that there was a boarding up fee that you had wanted to waive, and I don't see it in the materials.
I don't see
It is not in the materials, and there is no pending assessment before you. If there were to have been an appeal, it would have been at another time. There is no assessment in front of you for a boarding expense. It is not on any of the rolls in front of you. It is not showing up as pending in the real estate lookup. With respect to the possibility of a vacant building fee for 2020, 2021, that would really be up to the purchaser on how quickly they were able to do a rehabilitation. No permits have been pulled. It is still in the vacant building program for the foreseeable future until the issues in the code compliance have been addressed.
So there's been a motion by Mr. Tao. Any discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed, the resolution is adopted.
All right, so we are looking at the balance of the legislative hearing consent agenda. Is there anyone who is here for an item that has not been heard? Seeing none, this is a public hearing on the balance of the legislative hearing consent agenda. This is your public hearing. Ms. Prince moves to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed, the public hearing is closed, and the consent agenda is adopted as amended.
Before we adjourn, or before we recess, rather, I want to note that there are some guests in our chambers today, and I'm wondering, do you want to introduce yourself or share where you're from? Come on up. And get ready, because we're going to do the same thing for you. And don't get nervous, there's only 5 TV cameras on you.
A couple millions of people looking at y'all
When
right
your
now.
teachers confirm that you're here, you can just show them the video.
But go ahead and stand between the mics and introduce yourself and say who you are and what the heck you're doing here.
I'm Benny Tinty. I go to Korean-Durham Hall, and we have like a government, we're in AP Gov, and this is one of the options for a project.
Cool.
My name is Joseph Reeder, and I also go to Korean-Durham Hall.
I'm Charlie Lindell, and I'm here for the same reason.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
This was a meeting that was pretty under control. Sometimes they're wild, but it's what's that? Oh yeah, favorite part? Yeah, what we like to ask people too is like, what is your favorite thing about St. Paul? I mean,
The history.
the history? Cool.
Probably that it's just like a nice place to grow up. Like, not too busy. It's kind of laid back, but still a city.
Cool.
Yeah, I like the size of it. It's not too big, so wherever I go, I usually know a couple people, so that's nice.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today. And as Mr. Tolbert said, you can prove to your teachers that you were here by just showing them the video. So we appreciate having you here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, other half of the house, come on up. Come on up. Then it's you, sir. You didn't know this was going to happen, did you? So just let us know your name, what you're doing here today, and maybe we can just do it all at one time. What's your favorite part of St. Paul?
Oh, okay. So my name's Keela, and I go to Washington Technology, and this is also part of our government option choice. Oh, and favorite part. A favorite part that I like about St. Paul is that I feel like there's a lot of parks that I can go to, and
my name is Mina, and I also go to Washington. My favorite part of St. Paul, we have decent amount of opportunities for high schoolers, so I like that.
Cool.
And right here. Okay. My name is Quanisha Hill, and I also go to Washington. My favorite part of St. Paul is I have a lot of family here.
Cool. And Quenisha, do you mind if I brag on you a little bit? Sure. Okay. So Washington Tech is in Ward 5. Woo! And Quenisha is part of she's an artist. She's connected to In Progress, which is a nonprofit in Ward 5. And she was the videographer for the mayoral forum that we held in the North End during the mayor's race, and documented the conversations that we had with all the mayoral candidates, and it was really cool to have you there producing that event. So it was cool, and I feel like every time I turn around, I'm bumping into you. You're just doing cool stuff. So it's really great to have you here. Thanks for sharing your names and what the high school that you're from and what you love about St. Paul. It's really nice to have you here. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, that was kind of awesome. Very awesome. So our second favorite, best part of the meeting is there any news from the wards? Ms. Taker.
Why, thank you. And thank you to the Ward 5 office for providing me with this announcement. The St. Paul Business Awards for 2020 are now open for nomination. Nominations close on Friday, February 28th. So you only have about 6 weeks to think of your favorite businesses in St. Paul and get those nominations in. Our past winners are thriving everywhere you look, including one downtown, Afro Deli, which just expanded its business in its space on Wabasha, as well as into the Skyway. So if you're a St. Paul Business Awards winner, you're just bound for greatness. So nominate yourself or others for categories that you can nominate for, and on the city's website, St. Paul Business Awards, you can find all the details.
Great. It is true. If you get nominated, you are bound for greatness.
It's just the beginning of the glory.
And that last year's nominee, the Break Bread Company, has become a bread provider. I think it's a nice way for us to see that as well. Any other news from the wards?
I have news as well.
Ms. Yang.
Thank you, Councilmember Jalali, for sending this out. We actually have a panel discussion about the census 2020 coming up. It's in Ward 6. It's at the Hmong American Partnership, and it's a Hmong language event with live English interpretation through headsets. And so I'm just really excited for this outreach event. I feel like, we do, it's so important for us to reach out to folks who come from very marginalized communities in our political system, and this is a really big step forward. So thanks for your work as well, Councilmember.
Of course.
Thanks.
That's great. And I have long wondered when we were going to have a meeting that was held in Hmong with the earphones in English to kind of turn the tables and see what it's like to experience a meeting in that way as an English speaker. So that's a really interesting format. And remember that the census is still hiring folks to do census tracking, and they're paying upwards of $22 an hour for kind of a side hustle or a full-time gig. So we're looking for people for that very important work. St. Paul needs to be counted. It's incredibly important. All right, if there's no other news from the wards, we'll recess until 5:30. In order, roll call.
Jalali, Naker, Prince, Tao, Tolbert, Yang, Council President Bren Moen. 5 present, 2 absent, being council members Prince and Tolbert.
Before we get started here tonight, we have a variety of different items on our public hearings. This is the second portion of our meeting. The first portion begins at 3:30, and then we reconvene public hearings at 5:30. So folks have an opportunity to get here after a regular workday, although I know we all work different schedules. So we will be allowing on public hearings 15 minutes per side on items where there is support and opposition. If there's just a few people here, we may just have you speak to the issue and not put the timer on. Our ordinances, number 77 and 78, actually through 81 are the third reading, and so we will have a public hearing on these items, but we will not vote on them until next week because we vote. Our system requires us to vote on ordinances at the fourth reading. So sometimes it's strange to have a public hearing and then not vote, but that is how we do things here at the St. Paul City Council. So we have about 10 things on our agenda, and things should move along at a clip here tonight. So thanks to folks for being here and joining us tonight.
Item number 73, Resolution Public Hearing 20-4, ratifying the assessment for installation of a fire protection system as requested by Francesca O'Ryan for 786 University Avenue West.
And Mr. Tao, do we need a staff report on this item? This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? All right, seeing none, Mr. Tao moves to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item number 74, Resolution Public Hearing 20-9, approving the final combined plat for the Southport Barge Terminal.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, Ms. Naker moves to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item number 75, Resolution Public Hearing 20-14, authorizing the vacation and disposal of a portion of city land located at the Public Safety Garage and Fire Training Center site at 1675 Energy Park Drive to the Housing and Redevelopment Authority for subsequent redevelopment as a parking lot by an adjacent commercial property owner.
And I believe this was an item on our HRA agenda last week. Would you like a staff report, Ms. Jalali?
Actually, I don't know that we need one. I think we're okay.
All right, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, Ms. Jalali moves to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
6 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item number 76, Resolution Public Hearing 20-3, approving adverse action against the liquor on sale Sunday entertainment, liquor on sale, and liquor on sale 2 a.m. closing licenses held by Kevin Chua Tao doing business as Pupria Thai Restaurant at 945 Rice Street.
And I believe we have Ms. Palmer here from the City Attorney's Office to give us a staff report.
Yes, thank you.
And we're going to go ahead and get a staff report, and then we'll have a public
Speak in 1
hearing.
minute. Okay.
Okay. Sorry, just so that we have the information and the lay of the land. If you can just stand by for 1 moment, sir, and then we'll have you come up. Okay.
Good evening, Council President Brenmo and council members. My name is Virginia Palmer. I'm an Assistant City Attorney with the St. Paul City Attorney's Office here on behalf of the Department of Safety and Inspections. The matter before you is an adverse action against the licenses held by Kevin Chua Tao doing business as Pupria Thai Restaurant. I apologize. I know I just butchered all of that. But it is a violation, the alleged violation, or the violation which has been admitted, and the license holder wishes to speak to the penalty, is a second violation within a year period, and it involves 2 condition violations. There's a condition on the license that requires that videotapes be made available to the police upon asking. And the second condition that has been violated is that of proving to the Department of Safety and Inspections that the license holder is operating as a restaurant by providing the necessary documentation from the Minnesota Department of Revenue. He did provide 3 months of documentation, but not the full year as required, and provided some video, but it was shortened. It was not the entire period of time requested. The recommended penalty in this matter is a $1,000 fine, which is a matrix penalty under 310.05 M1, which is a presumed penalty, is presumed to be a valid penalty for all situations unless the council makes findings to justify either an upward or a downward departure. This matter is a second violation because the license holder was before you in July of 2018 on a lapse in liquor liability insurance, and within 9 months, within that 1 year period, 9 months later, these 2 condition violations occurred. Accordingly, the request of the Department of Safety and Inspections is to impose the matrix penalty of $1,000. As I said, the license holder does not contest the violations but wishes to argue the penalty.
Thank you. Before you step away, Ms. Palmer, are there any questions for the City Attorney's Office? Okay, sorry. All right, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? And actually, before you get going, for anyone who speaks tonight, when you come up, if you can just stand between the 2 microphones, they'll pick, a lot of times people want to adjust them, and you don't even need to. It's like magic. But if you can introduce yourself, let us know who you are and where you live. And then you will start the timer and you can share your perspective. And when you're done, if you could sign in at either, there's a ledger on either side of the podium. If you can sign in and include your full address and contact information, we will include that in the public record. So welcome and thank you for being here tonight.
Sure. What do that? President of Council and all council members, my name is Kevin Chua Tao, owner of Pupria Thai Restaurant, 945 Rice Street, Suite A, St. Paul, 55117. I'm here before you.
And are you a resident of St. Paul?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
I live in the east side
Okay.
on Lawson Avenue.
thank you.
Yep. I'm here before you just because this matter comes to the attention of yours and mine as well. And let's go back to the first violation, which is the level of insurance that are causing the suspensions and also the penalty of that. I was here for that matter, and I stated before you saying that it was the insurance and the underwriter's fault for coding the date over the coverage. So I did send them a letter before the renewal this year or this time, saying that if that should happen again, they will respond for anything in any cause due to whatever relate to the policy and the business. And they did respond correctly, perfectly. There was no issue about this renewing for this year, which is just perfectly. It comes to this one, actually it happens, and it starts from the minor car accident outside of the parking lot, and the St. Paul surgeon reported the case to the city. I received a letter requesting for all inside and outside video surveillance from 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. from Mr. Eric Hudick. I was confused by when I received the letter that requesting for the whole time 1 a.m. to 3 a.m., which is we close at 2 a.m. and no one will be after 2:30, which is approximately 2:30 for cleanup or anything. So I called him, and what was this regarding about? And he said about the car accident incident in the parking lot. I said, and well, of course, yeah, I know about that one. And I said, why you need everything regarding, including the tax as well? He said that I want that because I want to see that any violation associated with that car accident. I said, oh, well, of course, I can provide you with anything you ask. I said, do you need to see something else? He said, no, I just want to see that particular incident, car accident. I said, okay, of course. So I look at the camera, the video recording. The car accident started 1:56 a.m., just right before we closed. And actually, we already closed at 1:45, 1:50. So I provide that camera video recording. I even went out there sitting with him, and I said, you need to see something else? And he said, no, I just want to see that part. So I said, okay. So I misunderstood that the time that he requests from 1 a.m. to 3 a.m., so I just record from 1:56 a.m. to 2:30 a.m., which is nobody was there after 2:30. That was not the way he requests for. That's why I got in penalty into that video provided. But I did provide him what the incident was and when it happened. So that's the only incident and accident happened on that night at my place, which is the minor car accident outside in the parking lot. For the tax, I quarterly file. I gave him 3 quarters, which is March, June, September. And I missed the last quarter because I did not file it. I couldn't file it into the system. So I personal hand delivered to him, and he sent me a letter again saying that that was not satisfied or that was not what he asked for. So I went to the computer again, print out a full page, only one full page, dating from January 1st, 2018 to December 31st, 2018, in one single full page report to him. But that was not what he asking for. He asking for the 3rd quarter of the year. And I couldn't find it in the system. So I called the Minnesota Revenue, and the rep helped me, guide me through the system, and I got it printed out in front of me here. And here's what I have. I want to deliver to. So I got it printed out right here, but it was after, the period that he asked for.
You're putting something to show on the screen.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry, sometimes if I say that out loud, it will magically show.
Yes.
So that's a
I'm
magic.
sorry. Yeah.
So if you go ahead, you can set it back down there,
Okay.
right there, and then hopefully in a moment or two.
Right where the tapes are, there's a tape.
Oh, that's it. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we'll get the overhead camera, there it is, and they're
Yeah.
gonna zoom in for us, so
Sure.
that worked out great.
Sure. So that was the only missing piece that he asked for. I file quarterly, which is 4 times a year. But he said that I only filed only 3 months. That was not right. It was 3 quarters, but it's dated as March, June, and September and December for 4 quarters. So that was all this penalty about. I'm here before you, asking you to reconsider the penalty fee, either if the possible waive or drop out, because I'm the father of 8 kids plus my wife, 10 people in the family.
I'm gonna just interrupt you, and I apologize for that, but what I'm hearing is that you have a dispute about the facts.
No, I'm not. Just I'm admit to the fact, but just asking to either
But it sounds like you had the footage, you could have provided more. You sounds like they misinterpreted what you gave them. It just seems to me like it may have been worth it to go to the administrative law judge, because you've basically admitted to these violations, and so all we're doing is deciding whether or not this $1,000 penalty is appropriate, which is, so, but I'm wondering, and I guess I'm looking to Ms. Palmer, it sounds like the facts are in dispute, which is confusing to me.
No, I'm not disputing.
I'm just gonna ask Ms. Palmer a quick question.
Sure.
Council President Brenmo and council members, yes, it does sound like the facts are in dispute. He is disputing the specifics of the violations of the conditions. He did indicate that he was not going to contest the facts, but only address the $1,000 matrix penalty. I believe that at this point, it would be more appropriate then to refer it to an administrative law judge for a hearing on whether or not there have been actual violations.
Okay, thank you, just for clarifying. Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt you again. So are you, and Ms. Palmer?
Alternately, if you could lay it over and have an opportunity to discuss these matters, I'm not prepared at this point to argue the facts.
Right,
Thank you.
understood. Okay, did you have more testimony?
Oh, not anymore, President. That's all I have. Like she said, and I said in the written letter, I'm not here to dispute it, just here to discuss over the fact of the fee, $1,000. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to hear your perspective. Mr. Tao.
I guess I'm not clear. If he's not here to dispute the facts, then does that mean that he is not going to administrate law judge? Right?
Right.
Does he need to do that?
Right, he chose not to go to admit that he committed these violations, but wants us to reduce the fine.
Yeah. All right. So first of all, I move to close the public hearing.
Mr. Tao moves to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion prevails. Mr. Tao.
Mr. Tao, can you so how long you operated this restaurant?
This is my 6th year, President and council members.
Okay. All right. And then have you ever, when you bought the restaurant, have DSI sat down with you to talk about your license condition and what you need to uphold your license?
No one ever sat down with me and go over the term and regulations items.
Okay. And have you run a business like this before?
No, this is my first time. And it has been smooth since the last 6 years that I've been operating this business.
All right. So I think you talk about the incident about having the minor accident and then the police officer, and So I think that's a separate issue. And
understood.
if you feel like your rights have been violated or mistreated, I think that's a different conversation that you could work with the Sylvania Review Board on on that incident. But I think that regardless, you still need to provide those footage when we ask for it, because that's our ordinance. But given that, I think it makes sense for you to go back to work with DSI to fully understand your obligation as a restaurant owner, and being able to comply with our ordinance. So
Sure.
I'm willing to reduce this the $1,000 to $500. But given the condition that for the next 12 months, there's no other incident, and that you work with DSI to walk through what the license conditions are and any training that you might need for your staff and yourself.
Sure.
So are you proposing, and I'm checking with the attorney,
Sure.
because when we deviate from the matrix, there has to be a reason for the upward or downward departure. And I just want to check, is your recommendation that we sustain $500, but then keep the other $500, presuming there's no same or similars, for 12 months? So
For
that it
12
stays,
months,
it stays $1,000, but only $500 is assessed right now.
Right. And if there's no other incident come before us in 12 months, then the other 500 would be waived. But he had to agree to having proper training with his staff and have to sit down with DSI to fully understand his obligations and responsibility.
And Ms. Tierney, does that comply with the departure question that you were pondering?
Council President Branmo and Councilmember Chow, anytime that you deviate from the matrix and impose less than what the matrix calls for, you need to state your reasons for why you believe that this offense is less serious than a traditional second offense that justifies that downward deviation.
Well, my reason is that if he hasn't been, there's his license and he hadn't met with DSI on the full condition of his responsibility, and I also feel that he's been in business for 6 years. This is a tough area, and so he's been operating a business that so far this is the only time for a minor incident. And so, I don't understand the probable cause of why a police officer would then want to investigate his business. So, I mean, that's a separate incident.
I wonder,
And so-
Mr. Tao, I heard Ms. Palmer suggest that because she's not prepared to discuss the details, I think you're not the attorney that's typically assigned to this case, that it would be, we could lay this matter over for a week and get the facts before we move a recommendation, so that we are all operating with the same facts. If that would be, Ms. Naker.
Well, thank you. I was going to say I would prefer to get a little bit more clarity on the facts, either through referring to an ALJ or just for a layover, because I am concerned with a number of violations within the time period that we're talking about, that this isn't sort of one of those very first time violations and no same or similars for a while. I'm unclear as to whether or not violations actually occurred. So I'd feel more comfortable having that information before we decided to depart from the matrix.
I'm open to that. My reason for wanting to move forward is that the property owner, the business owner, said he didn't dispute the fact. And so I was going to make a motion to move forward. But if my colleague feels that a 1 week layover would be helpful for them to make a decision, I'm okay with that as well.
I would agree that 1 week might be helpful in making sure that we all had the same facts established. I would support a 1 week layover.
Sure.
Is there any, Ms. Prince?
I support Councilmember Tao's motion, and I'm supportive of laying it over. One thing that concerns me when we get to this stage in a hearing, and particularly for when we have a business owner whose first language isn't English, that there is really, this is one of the reasons that we did open for business, is because these rules and our process is really dense and difficult. And I really appreciate the license holder saying that he would like to admit to the facts and discuss the penalty, because going to an ALJ is an expensive process. And if you do not prevail in that process, it's my understanding that you pay the costs of the ALJ process. So I want to make sure that the license holder has all the information to make these decisions, because I support what Mr. Tao was saying about the license holder said he admitted to the facts, and he raised some questions, but if he's admitting to the facts, then I think what we deal with is the penalty. But I'm willing to do the layover. I just want to be clear that when you're dealing with this, when English is not your first language, we need to do a better job.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Ms. Naker.
Thank you. I think maybe what I'm hearing is that the appellant is admitting to the facts, but also adding additional facts and additional nuance that maybe wasn't clear originally, like the miscommunications with DSI that you're talking about. And so I just think there may be additional facts that we need to consider in making this, because just going off of the facts that were presented tonight by Ms. Palmer, I would say I think this is a clear second violation. We should go by the matrix, but there's additional information that I'm hearing, even if the base facts are being accepted.
Right, and when there is a lapse in liquor license, there is there is a meeting at that time where the conditions are reviewed. So I would like to understand whether or not that's been taken care of. I just think there's a lot that we don't know that would be helpful for me in feeling comfortable with the vote. Okay, and I'm looking at the record, and I thought the district council submitted a recommendation, and I'm not seeing that as well, and so that's something else I would like to see. So if it would be okay with Councilmember Tao, there is a request for a 1-week layover.
Motion to move for a 1-week layover.
Mr. Tao moves a 1-week layover. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is laid over to January 22nd, and that's at 3:30 p.m.
And the Ward 1 office will also be in touch with you in the interims. Just sometimes when we make these decisions and then we're not quite done with you, but we will, Mr. Tao is nodding in agreement that the Ward 1 office will follow up with you for next steps.
Item number 77, ordinance 19-76, amending Chapter 199 of the Legislative Code pertaining to rabies control.
And we have a staff report on this item. No, we don't. We don't need a staff report on this item. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? I was conflating it with the next item, so. Anyone here on this public hearing? Seeing none, Ms. Naker moves approval. All in favor, moves to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one.
Just a question. On this particular item, we have talked about in the past, and I did send out an email to this effect, that I don't have any background information on why we're doing it and how we got here.
Was it the next item?
Oh, was it the rabies? This is
I think the next item was about the impounded animals. That was where you had the
Okay.
questions. So let's get a staff report on the
Okay.
next item. All right,
So for item 77, it's still 7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed, and the ordinance is laid over to January 22nd for final adoption. Item number 78, ordinance 19-77, amending Chapter 200 of the Legislative Code, updating and adding definitions, making owners of impounded animals responsible for veterinary, rabies, and microchipping fees required before release, and prohibiting the release of impounded animals without appropriate restraint.
All right, and on this item, we are going to get a staff report. I think there was yes? Yep. And Ms. Prince, correct, this is the area that we were looking to fill in the blanks a little bit? Yes. Thank you. Mr. Najelic.
Madam Chair, council members, and Madam Chair, I've learned from last time I will not readjust the mic. So thank you for the education did pay off. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. This is a continuation of the license fee increases that we had before you a couple weeks ago. This got delayed a little bit just in terms of the language, but it really is in support of that. What it reflects is a couple things. One is we have a fee increase, as you have already supported. But in doing that, we also had a budget issue. Given the general fund pressures right now, we had to find additional resources to make sure we could sustain animal control and continue to provide the level of service, if not enhance that level of service. And so some things we've done are the license fees, as we've talked about. Part of that is we're increasing the veterinary services that we're providing at the shelter, providing better care to the animals. One of those things that we're allowed to do now is actually provide rabies vaccinations. In the past, we would allow somebody to reclaim their animal unvaccinated, which is a public health concern for us as a city. They would have to give us a $26 deposit. They would have to run to their vet and within 3 days get us a verification they vaccinated their animal, then come back to us, fill out the paperwork for the reimbursement of the $26 deposit, which could take a couple months. In addition, if they failed to provide us that information within 3 days, they could be charged with a misdemeanor violation. So clearly not great customer service, not good public health. So one of the things that you'll see in here that no animal will leave the shelter without being vaccinated for rabies. It's a benefit to the customer by the fact that we will be charging basically for the service and not the, if you go to the vet, there's usually the vet visit and the vaccination. We don't charge for a vet visit. We're charging for the vaccination. So they basically, it's one time they pick up their animal and they're out the door. They pay us for that. Their animal's current. There's no criminal charges potentially. So it's a real benefit to the owner. And this is the partnership that we have recently developed more with the Animal Humane Society. And they will be our veterinarian they're doing our veterinary work right now. And so we're actually having enhanced services. The other things we'll be able to provide are microchips. So let's say a customer says, I really should have my animal microchip and my animal came into the shelter. Could you microchip it before I take it back home? In that case, it's a customer request and we would charge them for, basically implanting a microchip. But that is only optional. It's up to the customer, except in the case of a declared animal, that is a requirement by ordinance. In that case, we would not allow the animal out the door without a microchip. But the microchip is really a service added. In addition to that, if an animal is in need of care, any veterinary services that we would render would then be compensated to the city by the owner once they reclaim their animal. So it's really advantageous that way. One of the questions raised was, well, but some animals shouldn't be vaccinated. And what are we doing about that? Animal control, as most animal control divisions throughout the country, understand that not all animals can be vaccinated due to health conditions. What we look for is the vaccination requirement is being met if, in fact, a veterinary says, no, this condition would prevent or should prevent this animal from being vaccinated. In that case, the animal does not get vaccinated. Basically, we just get the paperwork from the vet. It could be our vet. It could be somebody, the owner's vet. They would document it. We'd put on record that entity, that dog then is currently compliant with the ordinance requirement about rabies vaccination. So no pets will be vaccinated that shouldn't be based on the fact the vet will be doing the vaccinations. So all those are overseen by a veterinary that way. So really looking at ensuring that we're providing better care to our animals and better customer service. In addition to this, this supports the fee ordinance that went a couple weeks ago. One is we're now offering reduced fee for people who have some income barriers around licenses, which is something we did not have before. We are allowing rescue organizations not to pay a pet license for the first 6 months that they're fostering a dog. So really trying to be much more conscious of the customers we're serving and working with them around that. So really improving the services we're providing to owners and their pets, making sure we're ensuring public health and safety as a city, and working forward to provide a better program for our city. Stand for any questions.
Ms. Naker.
Thank you, Mr. Najalik. Just to be clear then, the microchipping is not required unless it's a declared animal, and is that optional microchipping a new service that we're offering?
That is, Councilmember Naker, Madam Chair, it is a new service. Before, they would have to go to the vet to get a microchip. So declared animal we would do before out the door. Otherwise, it's optional for the owner. Brand new service.
Thanks.
Great. Ms. Prince?
Yeah, we have gotten some feedback that people are concerned that this could be a financial issue for a lower income family getting their pet back. What are we, I mean, in terms of when we talk about veterinary bills and fees for impounding, what are we talking about there? I mean, how much might it cost to get, if your dog got away, doesn't have a rabies tag, the city picks it up, and then the person finds it at the pound, what would they be looking at in terms of fees to get that dog back?
Councilmember Prince, Madam Chair. So first of all, the ordinance provisions before you actually, I believe, will reduce the cost, especially for those who might have some income barriers around licensing. Like I mentioned, we are for the first time creating a reduced license fee based on income, which is something we did not have before. So that's the first thing. The second thing in regards to how much they pay, if a dog is licensed, the first time basically is a freebie. One of the benefits of licensing your pet in the city of St. Paul is there are many benefits, one of which is if we pick up your animal, we can return it to you. We're not going to charge you that initial fee. So there is really trying to make the incentive to people to license their pet. If the pet is not licensed, then basically they come into the shelter and we have a fee scale, which has been in place for years, and we're not proposing increasing it. So we did the increase in pet licensing a couple weeks ago. There is no increase in terms of the impound charges that we're currently charging. And those are based on how many times the animal has been impounded with us. 1 second. These are nice short ordinances. Here we go. So chapter 200, section .07. So the way it works is the owner of a dog which found running at large a second time within a 1-year period shall be subject to a $51 fee, as well as then the animal be required to be licensed, and then vaccination. And for vaccinations, they will be approximately, I'd have to check for sure, but I think about $35, $36. So the cost of getting a vaccination without any office visit charge you would see. So somebody comes in, if their dog's licensed, there's no cost. If it's the second time we pick up your animal, you're going to pay a fee. If your animal's not vaccinated, it will be vaccinated. So we're very conscious that pets are part of people's families, and we want to support that, but we have to ensure public health and safety as well as the financial impacts to the city of St. Paul.
One other question. On the previous ordinance, I just want to ask this question because I should have asked it when we were talking about the rabies control. Yep. The language in the ordinance, which stays the same, it's not a change, says that an animal control officer can enter an enclosed yard to see if an animal has a rabies tag or whatever. Yep. And I wasn't aware that you could enter an enclosed yard unless there was some danger at hand or something.
Like rabies.
Well, yeah, and it probably wouldn't be good to enter an enclosed yard to check to see if a dog has rabies, if it has rabies. But in any event, I think people are thinking that if you come into an enclosed yard, that the dog is trained and naturally protects, that you're creating problems both for yourself and the dog. So I understand that that's been part of our ordinance, and I just wondered if you could say a few words about that, because that has been discussed in the news media, and I'm getting questions about it. So I think it would be helpful for people to understand how that works for us and when we would go to that, when we would decide it was important to enter an enclosed yard.
Councilmember Prince, Madam Chair. Very good question. First of all, the ordinance amendment, this section needs a rewrite, and we fully understand. In fact, Molly Linares, our animal control supervisor, is working on amendments to our animal control code, which is necessary. But if you look at the language that was quickly eliminated, it really was meaningless, because the language currently says, before the amendment, is authorized to enter any yard, whether or not enclosed. What was stricken was whether or not enclosed. Well, any yard and whether or not enclosed is basically redundant language. So there's been no change. So that's first of all. So the second of all is there's a constitutional amendment, the Fourth Amendment, illegal search and seizure. That is what we operate on. The ordinance basically says that we have a right. The Constitution tells us when we can or cannot enter a property, and that's what we operate under. So this only says, based on that, you can go in the yard. We're not going to go in unless it's not a violation of the Fourth Amendment. Having worked in another jurisdiction as an animal control manager, very conscious of it. If the gate is open, is different than if the gate is closed from a Fourth Amendment standpoint. If there is a threat or an imminent situation, is different than if there is not. All those go into each particular situation, abiding by the Constitution. Those aren't spelled out here because each situation is different. We can't, but clearly we would not violate the Constitution. But we do need to go into yards. It could be a bite situation where a dog just ran into a yard. Whether the gate's closed or not, it's really about harm, imminent, and those other factors that go into it. But yeah, the Constitution would dictate it. This just sort of says that if this is an issue, we can go in.
Thank you.
A good question.
And I just want to say on the ordinance 1977, I really do appreciate the streamlining that you're doing. We're just recognizing that we're making it easier for people not only to make their pet safer for the public at large, but also to streamline the process for them to do that. Also making it more affordable. I mean, when I read your summary that said that it took 2 months to get returned their deposit check of $26. I mean, even that is a hardship. So the thinking to streamline this process, I hope we continue to do this throughout the department and beyond. Some of these things are so overdue. So I really appreciate the leadership and initiative on that. I think it will help protect the public at large and also help the pet owners quite a bit. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Prince.
I do want to say going forward that when we do see amendments coming forward like this, it would be really helpful to have some kind of a background memo attached so we understand why we're doing it, why now, what are the issues that led to this. Because anything involving people's pets is something that they take very seriously. And so I really appreciate getting answers in this setting. But I think it would, it's really important for us to understand the timing. And one other question I have is, if we are going to be doing a overhaul of the animal control ordinances, if you consider that this is urgent enough that this should go ahead of doing that rewrite of the animal control ordinances?
Councilmember Prince, Madam Chair, yes, because we believe that immediately making better veterinarian services as well as providing a better fee structure for our licenses is urgent enough to move forward. The rest of it we can make better, but these other two items, it's necessary to move forward because it's going to take us a little time to rewrite the animal control ordinances. But these actually provide immediate, as Council President Brenmon mentioned, a lot of these are overdue. The fact that we are releasing animals unvaccinated is just so overdue. The fact that we didn't have a reduced license based on income is well overdue. I mean, we just go down the list. These are well overdue. The other ones are coming, but these are some of the higher priority ones right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, Ms. Prince moves to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the ordinance is laid over to January 22nd for final adoption. Item number 79, ordinance 19-79, amending Chapter 409 of the Legislative Code to create and define boundaries for an entertainment district named Great Lawn Entertainment District.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, Mr. Tao moves to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the ordinance is laid over to January 22nd for final adoption. Item number 80, ordinance 19-80, amending chapter 246 of the Legislative Code to allow the possession or consumption of non-intoxicating malt liquor, strong beer, or wine purchased and consumed during a block party, festival, or community event within the Great Lawn Entertainment District.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, Mr. Tao moves to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the ordinance is laid over to January 22nd for final adoption. Item number 81, ordinance 19-81, creating Title 31 to be entitled City Sustainability and Resiliency, and Chapter 440 of the Legislative Code relating to the regulation of building energy consumption through the establishment of regulations.
Good evening, Mr. Stark. Staff report.
Good evening, Council President and council members. Good to be back. Hasn't been very long. Building off of your recent adoption of the Climate Action Resilience Plan, the last meeting of last year, we are pleased to be talking about this energy and water benchmarking ordinance tonight. Ordinances have different runway lengths. This one has had a long one. And I'm here to tell you a little bit of that story that we have been working on for a while. You probably will recall from our climate action work that the majority of our greenhouse gas emissions in St. Paul come from the energy used in buildings. And so this ordinance coming on the heels of our Climate Action Resilience Plan is really trying to create the first new tool that will apply to all larger buildings across the city to help start reducing emissions, and also has the opportunity to help building owners and operators save money in their operations. If we were to adopt this ordinance, we would be one of a little over 30 cities across the country that have done similar ordinances. Cities from LA and New York all the way down to smaller cities such as Edina, Minnesota, and Evanston, Illinois. The benefits of energy and water benchmarking are, as I already mentioned, to support our climate and energy goals, but also it really gives us a new tool for helping building owners prioritize some of the improvements that might benefit them and save them money. It facilitates a good opportunity to actually compare yourself as a building owner operator to other similar buildings, not only locally, but across the country within the tool. And we all know that we manage what we measure. And so the idea here is that we're going to start as owners and operators of larger buildings, including the city. We are going to be measuring our energy use and managing it better together. It'll also equip the city to be better prepared to assist building owners in this process. In other cities across the country who have implemented ordinances similar to this, they have seen annual energy savings resulting from the buildings covered by the ordinance of anywhere from 1% up to 4.5%. So that's annual energy savings year over year after ordinance implementation. EPA did some analysis that found that the average is somewhere in the 2 to 3% range annually. And so that's why we're bringing this ordinance forward to you today. It's an opportunity, a relatively low-touch opportunity in terms of a new ordinance that can help all of us reduce our energy use and emissions. So the engagement process to date has been robust. We have engaged extensively with folks like BOMA. We've been at the Business Review Council more than once, had great conversations. You'll hear from some of these folks tonight. The Minnesota Multi-Housing Association, the Midway and St. Paul Chambers of Commerce. We've hosted data jams, basically opportunities for people to learn how to use this tool. And of course, we've actively been working with the Race to Reduce under Energize St. Paul, which has been our voluntary program over the last 2 years. And over 200 buildings of the 700 or so of this size are already voluntarily benchmarking with us. So we're off to a great start, even prior to the consideration of the ordinance. That engagement has gone all the way to one-on-one meetings with building owners and just literally showing them how to use the tool. The Race to Reduce, we've already celebrated 2 sets of building owners the last 2 years who have participated in that program. And we will continue to do that for those who are sharing their data and information with us, and so that we can track and actually have really good information about how much less energy they are using, and how much fewer emissions they are creating. We just had the second of these recognition events back in December. So the ordinance, when you boil it down, is actually really simple in terms of what's required. Owners of large commercial and multifamily buildings will be required to use the Energy Star Portfolio Manager tool to benchmark their annual energy and water use. For buildings 100,000 square feet and larger, they will need to do this by June 1st of this year, and for 50,000 square foot buildings and larger by June 1st of next year. We have already been and will continue to make this process really easy for building owners. There's a hotline available that is for answering questions, for walking people through the system. We actually are contracting with this group Overlay that provides this service for many cities across the country. City staff are also available to answer questions and have been doing so for more than a year and a half already. Molly Janice Smith, who's here tonight from PED, is our lead on this program. And we've had and will continue to have an ongoing series of free events, how-to workshops on benchmarking, creating an energy plan, upgrading your HVAC systems, financing tools that are available, and related topics. We've got an active advisory committee on this Energize St. Paul work who have talked about this ordinance and helped to shape it. Folks from across the public and private sectors, as well as subject matter experts. And I won't read the list, but you can see some of the folks who have been involved in that effort on the committee. And I will wrap up my comments there and take any questions.
Are there questions for Mr. Stark, Mr. Tolbert?
Will the info be public, or will it will be protected data to the city?
The data, the energy data that the building owners will enter into the tool is their data, and we will not have access to it. If they check a box opting in to sharing the data with us, which allows us to help them even more, then we will have the data. And if we have the data, it is public information at that point.
So what if they don't give information?
That's fine. We will be able to still verify that they have entered their building into the portfolio manager system, and we just won't have the data in terms of the energy use.
Okay, so it's an optional program?
They're required to set up their building in the system and enter information. All we will know is that they have done that. We won't know what that data is that they've entered. So that's what the ordinance is requiring, that they've set the building up in Energy Star Portfolio Manager to track their own energy and water use. The actual energy and water use data we won't have unless they actively give us that information.
And if I'm understanding correctly, the heavy lift is really getting signed up, which is required, and that a lot of the building owners have an incentive, just a financial incentive to participate, because if they are using the data, they can reduce their energy expenses as well.
The more they're sharing the data, the more we're able to help them compare themselves to other buildings across the city and across the country, and to identify tools that are the best tools for them to actually make some improvements to further their energy use reduction and save money.
Mr. Tolbert.
So what happens if they don't sign up?
So if they don't enter the building into the system, then they would, on an annual basis, they would be deemed out of compliance. They would get a letter from DSI pointing out that they are out of compliance and asking them to come into compliance. And then and the city attorney can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but as all city ordinances, technically a violation is a petty misdemeanor, I believe.
Close.
Got
Yeah. Violation of all city ordinances is a misdemeanor, but in this case, the ordinance has been drafted that violation is a petty misdemeanor with a $200 fine.
Thank you.
And is this a situation where if the city had the ability to do administrative fines, that administrative fines could be employed in like repeat offenses?
Yeah, if we had the ability to do administrative fines, we could add that into this ordinance, yes.
Thank you. Ms. Naker and then Ms. Jalali.
Thank you. Is it a petty misdemeanor then against that has to be against an individual, right? So is it the property manager in this case or the owner?
It's against the owner.
Okay, and I want to go back to Mr. Tolbert and then Ms. Jalali.
So who owns the data?
The energy use data?
Yeah.
The building owner.
But there's an app or there's a data collection system. Who owns that system?
Oh, the EPA runs it, the Environmental Protection Agency, federal agency. It's part of their Energy Star program. It's just it's a tool. Only you as the user with an account and a password actually have access to the information that's in the tool unless you actively share it with someone.
Okay, Ms. Jalali.
And I know that in Minneapolis, there's, like under their benchmarking program, you can look and see a cool visualization on their city website, and you can look up properties that have chosen to disclose. Is that something that we see our city doing once we have gone a few years down the road with this and have voluntary data that has been chosen to be shared, or is that getting ahead of things? It's just interesting resource. I could see that being really useful for.
Yeah, I think what we've talked about is putting everything in the positive. So highlighting the buildings that are sharing their data and talking about how we are doing collectively in those efforts.
And then showing how they've accessed innovation through, working with the EPA and the different pieces. Okay. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Are there other questions for Mr. Stark?
If I could briefly, I just lost it. It'll come to me in a second.
All right, so there's no further questions, and we will open the public hearing. I think on this matter, we'll just hear folks who have not in support or opposition. I think this is one of those things where if there's a concern, it's a particular part of it and not about the whole project. So we'll open it up for 15 minutes for comments if people would like. And so this is a public hearing. Please join us if you have like to share on this ordinance.
Good
Welcome.
evening. My name is Shannon Watson. I am the Director of Public Affairs for the St. Paul Area Chamber of Commerce. I am a St. Paul resident. Tonight I am here with my Business Review Council chair hat on. In our November meeting, Mr. Stark came and gave, like he mentioned, has been in front of this group more than once, gave a final presentation, shared with us the draft ordinance of this, the draft of this ordinance. And the Business Review Council unanimously voted to support the ordinance draft in front of us. That was based, and we've been engaged in this work for almost 2 years. We appreciate the city engaging with the business community and taking those issues into consideration. And the mandatory usage of the tool and the voluntary disclosure of data, that was very important to the business community because in a lot of cases, the energy use in some cases can be a proprietary information, and so that was very important. So good, timely comments. We do encourage businesses in St. Paul to use the tool as they will be required to, and also share their data as their current situation allows. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And be sure to sign in. Welcome.
Hello.
Thank you, Council President and Council members. My name is Ben Rabe, and I direct the Built Environment Program at Fresh Energy. We're an independent energy policy nonprofit working to speed the transition to a clean energy economy, and I've been working with the city on this effort for more than 2 years. Many of my points were already brought up by Mr. Stark, but I'll try to go through them as quickly as possible. We strongly support the proposed ordinance to compel buildings in St. Paul to measure their energy and water performances via the Energy Star Portfolio Manager. As we heard, emissions from building energy usage account for over 60% of St. Paul's greenhouse gas emissions, contributing to the climate crisis, and benchmarking is a first step in understanding this issue, or where the biggest users are, and reduce that usage. Recognizing this is done by over 30 cities nationwide, including Minneapolis, St. Louis Park, and Edina in Minnesota, have passed similar ordinances. And in fact, over 200 buildings in St. Paul have benchmarked since 2008 through the city's voluntary program. One aspect that we heard that is different in this ordinance than in other places is the mandatory disclosure piece. We really believe that's the key to recognizing leaders, or a key in recognizing leaders, and be supportive of the city making progress in this area moving forward. Benchmarking, as we've heard, is an effective, low-cost way to encourage energy and water efficiency. By passing the ordinance, the City Council would be taking important steps towards making our city more resilient. We strongly support the proposed ordinance.
Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Chelsea DeArmond, and I live in Ward 7. And tonight I'm here on behalf of St. Paul 350. St. Paul 350 is happy to support Ordinance 1981 on energy benchmarking. We are a grassroots organization of residents who are committed to ending fossil fuel pollution that is damaging St. Paul communities and our climate. We are committed to speeding the transition to clean energy and to creating a just and healthy future for us all. St. Paul 350 was launched in April of 2019 when the first draft of St. Paul's Climate Action and Resilience Plan was also released. So it is our pleasure to support the passage of this ordinance so quickly after the City Council's unanimous approval of the Climate Action and Resilience Plan in December of 2019. In this time of growing awareness of the climate crisis, we are encouraged to see city leaders taking decisive action. St. Paul 350 fully supports the legislative purpose and intent of this ordinance. Energy benchmarking is a proven and cost-effective method for developing strategies and incentives for increasing efficiency and reducing building emissions. We support the city in educating building owners about the cost savings and public health benefits of investing in energy efficiency, and in creating incentives for building owners to voluntarily disclose their benchmarking results in exchange for assistance with energy efficiency work. St. Paul 350 is confident that the city will exhibit the same resolve we see today to continue expanding city policy and developing new ordinances that will ensure a just and healthy future for all who live in St. Paul. And we look forward to collaborating with our city partners in pursuit of our common values. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Council President Bryn Moen and council members, my name is Jim Doyle, and I'm a constituent of Ward 1, and I'm also a volunteer with St. Paul 350. So I support this ordinance for the reasons that Chelsea just gave in the St. Paul 350 statement. So I'll be very brief. I just wanted to say how encouraged I am that the goals of CARP are now beginning to be implemented, and that this is happening within a month of passage, including a holiday season right in the middle. CARP has a lot of great ideas, but obviously implementation of these ideas is really what matters. And this is what many of us were wondering about when we're reading CARP first came out. How are these proposals going to be put into practice? So I think this ordinance today is really the beginning of an answer to this question. It really is a good first step. So we obviously have a lot of work to do. And I look forward to seeing SB 350 continue to work with the city in dealing with the climate crisis. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
My name is Tim Wooling. I live in Ward 4. I support this benchmarking ordinance. I support the ordinance especially because for 5 or 6 years now, I have been using the benchmarking tool specified in the ordinance, namely Portfolio Manager, to monitor my church's energy use. The church building is not one that would be required to submit the data, but even so, I have linked it to St. Paul's program. The benchmarking tool analyzes the energy data in many helpful ways. These are insightful for a building owner, even if sharing with the city is not done. Here is an example. Can you?
Yep, so you have it on the overhead screen. Yep, we can see it.
Here's an example of a graph that shows the church's energy use. It shows 5 heating seasons of natural gas use in red and electricity use in blue. The benchmarking tool automatically created the chart and converts the data to the same units of energy so that direct visual comparison is possible. The red peaks show the winter space heating load. The blue electric energy use increases in the winter too, but it's hard to see because it's so small compared to the gas variations. I am struck by how clearly the 2 red peaks on the right show the benefit of energy improvements made in the summer of 2017. I show this graph to give an idea of how the benchmarking tool can help evaluate measures taken and can aid in planning next steps. The purpose of benchmarking is to help carry out the Carbon Action and Resilience Plan that was just adopted. A little digging in the benchmarking data gave me a lesson on carbon action I hadn't fully appreciated. Even though the amount of gas energy, as you can see on the graph, is so much greater than the amount of electric energy, what the church pays annually for electricity is about the same for gas. So per dollar, the church gets 8 times more energy from natural gas than from electricity. This tells me the church will have to push down those red gas peaks even more before electrification can be successful. The lesson, reduction must accompany electrification. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thanks for the visual aid. Appreciate that.
Hello, I'm Jean Comstock. I'm a member of St. Paul 350, but I'm here tonight speaking as a resident of beautiful Dayton's Bluff in Ward 7. First, I want to give just a belated congratulations to everyone who was involved in the finalizing and the passing of the Climate Action and Resilience Plan just last month. I'm really excited to be here tonight, less than 1 month after the plan was approved, and have an ordinance already set to go. So I think that in the coming weeks and months, we are just going to continue to see more things coming out and moving us ahead in this action plan that we know we have to get accomplished. We may even see the Community Advisory Board come to fruition, but that's in the future. I think tonight we have great reason to celebrate this and move ahead. I strongly urge you to approve this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Be sure to sign in. Mr. Blazer, it looks like
Hello,
you're
Clint Blazer, Halverson Blazer. I know you're all scared. I'm against it. I can't believe I'm actually here testifying for a law and an ordinance. So.
We know you're there.
So I am on the BOMA board, and you should have a letter from BOMA that we signed that BOMA is in support. I'm also involved with the Minnesota Multi-Housing Association. Molly and Russ have done a nice job of getting input from MHA, and they don't oppose the ordinance. And I really just want to commend Molly and Russ for, I think they'll tell you a couple years ago I was probably the one most against it. They've just done a really nice job because it was more the stick part of the whole ordinance, and they've just done a marvelous job with the carrot part of it and the education and how can we reduce, and you can't improve what you don't measure. So pretty much everything, I just echo what Russ had said, and fully support it. I let you know we have about 800,000 square feet of commercial space that we've already signed up in St. Paul. We probably manage 700 or 800 units of multifamily in St. Paul, and most of them are 20-unit buildings, so it won't even be subject to the ordinance, but we already actively do it, and I do know there's a lot of other landlords in town that already do use it as well. I don't know if anyone said anything, but the Center for Energy also worked closely with owners to help show ways to reduce, and I know you guys connected all of us with them, so thank you.
And I really appreciate the illustration of where you started out and how you've been brought along, and I appreciate the acknowledgement of that. Yes. It's really helpful, and it's good to know that that the partnership with the staff and the BOMA and those, that when we collaborate, that this is something that benefits us all in the long run. So I appreciate hearing that from you.
You're very welcome, and thank you for including us. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Is there anyone else here to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, Mr. Tolbert moves to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the ordinance is laid over to January 22nd for final adoption.
And again, as I mentioned, we don't vote on this tonight, but is there anyone has anything to, Ms. Prince?
Yeah, I think it's really terrific that everyone we heard from and all the letters we have are supportive. And I want to give Mr. Stark particular congratulations on that, because I really have appreciated reading letters and comments and then hearing tonight about his collaborative approach and the turning of sticks into carrots. And I think we do very well as a city when we can really make that our operating strategy. So I just really appreciate this, because I had expected that there might be some more push and pull on it, and it really is good to hear the feedback.
Great. Ms. Jalali.
Yeah, I just feel really grateful for all the effort that's gone into this. I know it's been a long-running, multi-pronged approach, and I just think about how we learned through our climate action plan process that buildings are roughly half of all our emissions in the city, and what we can do as a city to better regulate our emissions and our output starts with our buildings. And if our largest buildings are effectively the single biggest source of emissions within that, I think this is just the beginning of what we have to do. So I'm very appreciative of all the efforts here. When I think about our large building stock and the range and the type of buildings we have, all of the variety of materials and places where we're losing energy that we don't even realize, I think this is just a really, really smart ordinance, and it's going to make a big impact. So I'm wholeheartedly supportive. I'd like to see us keep building on this, and I want to thank everyone who helped make it successful tonight to get us to this point. Really appreciate it.
Ms. Naker.
Yeah, I'm also struck by the elegance of this as a public policy approach, that just awareness alone can show those dramatic reductions in energy use, how much more so actual changes in behavior. Awareness is relatively cheap and efficient, and so it's interesting to me to think about how much you can achieve just by paying attention to your usage, and how maybe we can use that sort of awareness approach in other forms of change that we want to make in the city.
I just wanted to comment that it was really beautiful how there were so many stakeholders coming together at the table, and as somebody who is coming in as like the newest council member, it was really great just seeing like all the letters of support from community, and like seeing people doing the groundwork and staff coming together around this. So it was great. I think it's a really great example of how we want to continue coming together in the future.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Yang. All right, we will see this again in 1 week. Thank you.
Item number 82, ABZA 20-1, considering Chu Vang's appeal of a decision by the Board of Zoning Appeals denying variances of the off-street parking requirement and driveway width requirement.
And I think we'll have a staff report on this.
Good evening, Council President, Council members. My name is Matthew Graybar. I work for the Department of Safety and Inspections in the Zoning Division. I staff the Board of Zoning Appeals, and I represent the DSI on hearings. The background: the appellant's variance request to legalize both the concrete parking pad in the front yard and the extended driveway was denied by the BZA on December 16th, 2019. Mr. Vang, the appellant, is here to appeal the BZA's decision to deny his variance request. I have some photos here of the new parking pad. So you can see where the existing parking driveway here is 16 feet wide, 30 feet long, and the new parking pad is 14 feet wide and about 24 feet long. It doesn't go all the way to the curb. And it's made of concrete. Here's another before photo. So as you can see, the driveway lines up with the garage doors, which are permitted to go 4 feet wider than the garage doors for 30 feet. However, that's not the case in this. So then we look at the after photo. So as you can see, the existing driveway here with the 2 cars in front of the garage door with the installation of the new concrete pad with the red truck on it is what's being appealed. Denies for the variance for that. The applicant stated the BZA erred in finding 3 in that the BZA did not take into consideration the unique family the appellant has and also the location of the uncontrolled T intersection in front of this house. And in regards to finding 6, the appellant stated that there are 4 other houses in the neighborhood that also have similar parking in the front yard and widened driveway. Pending your questions, that's all I have.
Are there any questions for Mr. Graybar? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We may have questions in a moment, but for now, we're set.
Yes,
all right,
absolutely.
this is a public hearing. Would you like to testify?
Good evening, council members. Thank you for hearing my appeal. I am Chu Vang. I am the owner of the home. I believe the BZA board is mistaken because they didn't consider all the facts and all the information. Because some of the information was submitted after the public hearing, that was not considered. The first piece of information that was not considered was when the district council heard about the variance request. I reached out to them and they supported the request, the land usage. And I don't believe that was considered because that was, again, after the public hearing. In addition, my family is a multi-generational family. We have 5 cars. So parking in that driveway is in our current driveway, it doesn't fit the car, and we always have to park 2 cars on the street. We've lived at my home for about 4 years now, and every winter we go out and we dig people out and we push people who get stuck in that intersection. It is not an intersection that's safe to park. So the finding number 3 about practicality and difficulty, it is not difficult to park on the street, but it is not practical to park in that specific spot. It was compared, the BZA considered this parking space compared to other homes in the area. Those other homes there, they do not have this unique situation where it's a T intersection. If my home didn't have that, I don't believe I would be here. In addition, this intersection is also used for school bus stops. And so parents often stop in front of my home to pick up their children. So just these 2 factors make it that having my cars parked in front of my home, taking up that space, is not practical. That's for finding number 3. As for finding number 6, altering the characteristics of the neighborhood. Again, as Matt has already stated, I just walked around the neighborhood, and with this in mind, I noticed that there were other homes, in fact 4 other homes, that had very, very similar parking spaces already there. So these types of variants were already granted to 4 other homes. So I would not be altering the neighborhood, the characters of the neighborhood at all. And other homes with longer parking spots, and other families, they're multi-generational, they have more vehicles parked in their parking spot. It's just that they had a choice where their driveway was much longer or it went into the back of their home. This is my only choice, to keep my cars off of the street. And with that, I'd like to ask you to approve that the variance request so that I may keep my cars off the street. It would be a benefit to the neighborhood and to the folks, to the buses and to the children. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you have something to add? Welcome.
Hello. Madam Chair, members, first off, congratulations. You've all been newly sworn in. It's a new council. And I'm looking at the one white guy on the council, and I'm just pleased that the representation of the city is what it is right now. My name is John Slade. I'm on the District 1 Land Use Committee. And I wanted to talk just a little bit about the same, basically the same basic points about this. The practical considerations, there are 2 points, 3 and 6, that staff found were not in keeping with the granting of the variance. The practical considerations of both the built area, the T intersection, and the cultural fact that there are kids that are using that T intersection for the bus stops, I think is an area that could have been and should have been taken into consideration. And also the point number 6, not as, changing the essential character of the neighborhood. I've lived on the east side for about 25 years, and in that time, the demographics have changed. My neighborhood and the applicant's neighborhood were built for single income families, 3M or the Hams or the Whirlpool, and that's not the case anymore. Immigrant families right now, as you also know, I do housing organizing. For a family of 5 adults, it's almost impossible to find rental, but it is possible to own. And so that gives us situations where multi-generational families are having 5 cars. I think that is the essential character of the east side of St. Paul right now. And so that the concerns like this are indeed valid. I'm also aware I'm the last order of business for tonight, so I will bid you all a fond farewell. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wants to testify on this topic? All right, seeing none, Ms. Prince moves to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion prevails. Ms. Prince.
Yes, in studying this issue and knowing the neighborhood as well as I do, I believe that the BZA erred on finding number 3 in terms of this not being a hardship for the household. Not only is on-street parking a problem, but at a T intersection, you can't park on either side of the street for 20 feet on either side. I mean, the part of the T intersection, including 20 feet on either side on both sides of the street, is parking prohibited. So the parking on that T intersection is problematic. And that is under our city's parking rules. So if you look up the parking rules for a T intersection, you'll find that he has no legal parking in front of his home. Secondly, I find that the BZA erred in determining that this altered the essential character of the neighborhood. Battle Creek is a suburban-style street layout and mid-century housing stock, where, like Maplewood across McKnight, is Rambler-style houses with large garages, a lot of hardscape. And I looked at the satellite view of this particular neighborhood, and not only did I find the 4 homes that Mr. Bang pointed out as having much wider driveways than were allowed in front of their garages, which I understand is an additional 4 feet. But there were several right in that immediate vicinity that had much wider driveways. With the support of the district council and the fact that Mr. Vang's neighbors supported his variance request, but also for the main reason that I believe the BZA erred with findings 3 and 6. I move to grant the appeal.
Mr. Tao.
Thank you, Council President. I also share similar finding as Councilmember Prince. When I mapped out those other 4 property, they were in walking distance to Mr. Vang's property. And then there was also one property that it's at the corner. It's the 2006 Hilding Avenue, and that is also at a T. And so I'm going to support the appeal.
Other discussion? Ms. Naker.
Oh, thank you. My computer shut down on me, so I can't see this for myself. But did the BZA consider the issue of the T intersection and the parking prohibition there and just reject that as an issue, or was that not actually discussed at all? Because I'm just wondering if this was an error in procedure or finding and that they didn't actually even talk about it, or whether they just disagreed with us, which is different than an error.
Council President, Council Member Nager, Council members, I believe the BZA members looked at the location of where the house is compared to the T intersection. However, I don't think they fully went into depth about its problematic nature that you can't park there because it's an uncontrolled intersection.
Thanks.
And I'm really torn about this. I understand the points about the BZA, and I also do recognize that there are plenty of properties in different parts of the area that I represent where there's lots of cars in the driveway and in some instances parking pads. And I am sympathetic to changing needs and differing uses of these properties, but I also think that this is a kind of a policy question that we might need to tackle, and I'm a bit concerned if we vote in support of the appeal that it opens up a Pandora's box in terms of these front yard parking pads, because the before and after picture, at least to me, was shocking. It does alter the appearance of not just that house, but I think the other examples we were looking in the neighborhood, it may have wider driveways, but none other have another 20 feet of parking pad. So I'm just a little conflicted about just that there's a question that we may need to address more globally. And by picking one of these off, we've been inconsistent with how we vote on parking pads in the front yard, and so I'm concerned about sort of the precedent that this will set. And so I am going to vote against this, but I, at the same time, respect the concerns and questions that have been brought up, and I do think it's more prevalent, particularly in areas that I represent, than we even know. So, other thoughts? All right.
Can I want
yeah,
to
Ms. Yang.
comment? I think that, I am still in a very big learning phase, but I think that as I think about how our demographics around family size is going to continue changing, I think that we will run into more cases like this, and when the time comes for us to discuss policy changes, I think that we should be ready for it, and I think that all of you will have a lot of really great examples to bring up to the table. For me, because I am thinking about how this will show up in my ward as well, knowing that it's a very diverse ward with larger families. I think that I completely resonate with what the applicant was sharing, and I will be supporting it. So that's all. Thanks.
Yep, and I would just say that in response to that, the time is now. I don't think that this is going to be coming in front of us, and if it's something that's important to you, we should see leadership on this issue and resolving the policy when we go forward, so that we don't have to continue to look at these as a one-off. And maybe it's, allowed in instances where there's a T intersection. Maybe it's allowed in instances or in certain parts of the city where I don't know what it is, but I do think that we need to resolve this on a policy level and not a piecemeal basis, and we really shouldn't wait any longer because they are coming up. So I agree 100% with what you're saying, and I just think the Imperial we need to move on that. Ms. Prince.
I do want to stress that in terms of what the variance finding is that the essential character of the neighborhood is impacted by this. This is an area that is particularly suburban in nature. And so the other thing to Ms. Naker's point, there is nothing in the findings or in the minutes that reflects that they looked at what the parking restrictions are at a T intersection. And it's significant on both sides of the street. So
you said that was 20 feet.
It's 20 feet from the intersection on both sides of the street.
Okay, Ms. Naker, and then, or Ms. Jalali, and then Ms. Naker.
Yeah, I think I similarly have the broader concern of the council president. I'll support your motion, Councilmember Prince, but looking at 3 and 6, 3 being about the practical difficulty piece and 6 being about the character, I agree with the points that have been made, and going off of that, I'll be supporting your motion today. But I similarly would not like to see us expand parking pads piecemeal. I think that we have to figure out a harmony between growing families and then also figuring out how to design our city not so heavily around our vehicles, but around the sort of neighborhood life we want to support in a range of ways and modes of transportation. So I'll be supporting, but I want to just appreciate the points that you're making. I fully share the broader concerns, and I would be happy to support a policy review and learn how we can improve this. So
Right, we talk a lot about losing green space, and when you lose your whole front yard to concrete, you lose a lot of green space. And I do want to reiterate that I fundamentally agree with the points people are making, but I am going to stick with no just so that we make sure we do this. Ms. Naker.
Thank you. I will. I also feel torn. I will support the motion because I do believe a compelling case has been made that there were certain omissions and consideration, and I think that the practical difficulties of not being able to park for that long of a stretch in front of your house are significant. So I think that is why I'm supporting the motion. I'm really conflicted about, and if we talked about a policy to deal with the fact that we have very different types of families throughout the city, I think we'd quickly get into moral conundrums where people say, well, my choice is to have 5 pickup trucks and I want to have them, and I want to have a multi-generational family living together, and being able to parse through why one is okay and one is not quickly gets into these individual choices that are really hard to wrestle with. So I think we do need to decide it. I think it's not going to be easy to grapple with that. But the family size in this particular case is not why I think I'm voting to support the motion.
In my ward, I've noticed that where there's one, they proliferate. And so then you get this perspective that there's just a parking lot in front of every house on a particular street. And then I hear people say, well, talk about disinvestment or talk about housing values, and those things all play into it too. So I think if we try to distinguish like what neighborhoods are these okay in or what neighborhoods are they not okay in, then we're going to run into other challenges. So it is, I know that this issue is poignant for me because on Wheelock Parkway, we had a similar situation where we had just installed sidewalks where there hadn't been sidewalks and a bike infrastructure where there hadn't been, narrowed the road and tried to create a parkway, and then suddenly had a parking pad in somebody's front yard, and it really takes away from the parkway itself. Ms. Yang.
I have a question. So like in cases like this where the cement has already been laid, like if the council were to vote to not support it, like what would happen after?
They would get an order to remove it.
Oh, okay.
And recognize that is expensive to put in and expensive to take out. But if the permit would have been applied for in the first place, those things would have been navigated. But it would be, if we voted against the appeal, the order would be delivered to remove it. Doesn't look like that will happen here tonight, but anything else on this matter? Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Me
6 in favor, 1 opposed. The motion of intent is to grant the appeal.
And that brings us to the end of our meeting. Unless there's anything else to come before us, we are adjourned.